Hi, it's good to see you and welcome to another episode of Leadership Lean-In.
Great.
My name's Alex, if you don't know me.
Hi, I'm Rodney.
And yeah, we do these every single week just to kind of keep you up to date with what's going on church life. Sometimes we have interviews. But for the next 3 weeks, we've got an extra special little set of episodes where we're going to be covering what we're calling Pioneer Membership. So hopefully you've heard us talk about this in different settings now. But this is basically, what does it look like to be part of Redeemer at this season in our journey? We've just started this new church, and for a whole load of us, before we started, we asked you, would you like to plant Redeemer? Would you be able to say, yes, I'm planting Redeemer in the town centre and to start this new church? But we're increasingly aware that actually we didn't flesh out a lot of the detail at the time. And so whilst we were so pleased with the response of people, from their hearts saying, yes, we want to respond to this and what God is doing, actually, we just wanted to put a bit more flesh on the bones and just give you a bit of, some substance to be able to get your teeth into, to say, this is what it means to be part of Redeemer. This is what it means for you practically. And we're going to do that over 3 episodes. This week, we're going to talk about leadership. Yep. Next week, we're going to talk about vision. And then the third week, we're going to talk about family priorities. That's right. Yeah. And so we're going to cover those 3 things one at a time, and we're also going to hear from some members of the leadership team as we go, just to kind of get their take on each one of these different aspects. Yeah. So today we're going to spend 20 minutes talking about leadership. So we're just going to start with, what is leadership and why do we need it? So what do you think?
Well, there you go. Leadership, every church needs leadership, really. Every church needs a God-anointed leadership. And this is the way that God has ordained, I think, for the church to be birthed and certainly to grow. Different stages of church life need different types of leaders, but when a church is planted, usually it's planted with a leadership team, which is kind of broadly representing different gifts in the church, men and women who are really called of God just to get it off the ground. And that's the stage that we're at right now. We've got a leadership team which is just kind of launching Redeemer and getting it motoring and getting it going. And I feel this is God's way of doing that.
And so we really believe in eldership. The Bible talks a lot about eldership, actually very little about leadership teams, although it talks about leaders all over the place. Yeah. And so that's where we're heading. We would like to get to a place in the near future where we're able to recognise a team of elders who we think God is raising up to lead and carry this church. And we talk about eldership in terms of what we just call 4 Ds as a nice way to summarise it. So those 4 things are direction, doctrine, discipline and training, really, and displaying what it looks like to have a godly life, a godly character, the life of Jesus in you. So we talk about it in terms of those 4 things. But we're not at the stage of having elders yet. Like Rodney said, we're this new church. We've got this leadership team in place. Kind of, it's like this initial team just to get us over the line, the initial line of becoming a new church from this really kind of fledgling thing, and just to make sure the whole thing grows healthily from the beginning. Yep. But that's the kind of role that we're playing as a team at the moment, is to kind of in some way carry some of those Ds together, to set the direction, to display what we think is a godly life, try and do that to the best of our ability, to figure out how people are trained and discipled and growing up to maturity in the faith, also to make sure that we're believing healthy things, that we're feeding ourselves healthy things. Yep. So that's kind of how we think about it in terms of those 4 Ds, both for an eldership team in a kind of capital D way, if you understand what I mean, those things in a very full sense, but this leadership team kind of increasingly taking on those responsibilities as we go.
So the life of God really in a leader is important, because if you remember from 1 Corinthians, Paul says, imitate me because I imitate Christ. And so actually leaders are those that are looking to Jesus, allowing the Holy Spirit to lead their lives, to guide them, making decisions, sometimes quite tough decisions, sometimes very small decisions. Yeah. There's a lot in small decisions, and then you'll make bigger decisions in the right sort of way. But in Hebrews also it talks about, consider your leaders, consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate them. And I often feel like, what do you imitate? What are you looking to imitate in a leader? And I think it's the life of God in them. It's the faith that they display. It's the way that they make decisions. It's the way that they conduct their lives, their families. And so it's a big call on leadership, even at the first stage of a leadership team. Although it's not eldership yet, actually we're looking for godly men and women who are going to display something that's going to set the tone for the church and kind of like set the culture of how, how people make decisions in their lives and how the church will make decisions.
Yeah. And I guess that feeds into, so we're going to have a video in a moment, but just feeds into the kind of leaders that we want in Redeemer. So we're not looking for perfect people. There's no such thing as a perfect Christian. There's certainly no such thing as a perfect leader. But we still think that leaders we should be able to imitate them. And so I guess what we mean by that is, like you say, is seeing the life of Jesus at work by the Spirit in someone, is seeing, I guess, some humility, the ability to repent, the ability to change, the ability to respond to the Spirit. These are kind of things that we're looking for. I guess the fruit of the Spirit we're looking for,
absolutely.
Isn't it?
Definitely.
And hopefully in increasing measure, like we're all growing into it, to what it means to be, to have the life of Jesus in us. We're all growing into that and becoming more like him.
Yeah. We're all on a journey, and hopefully as well within a team we can kind of encourage one another in that. And leadership as well, it's important that we're servants. Jesus talks in Luke about servant leadership, and so that's kind of what we want to model as well. That's a challenge sometimes, but we've got to rise to that challenge.
I'd also really love us as a team to be the kind of leadership we want a Redeemer is yes, like humble, servant-hearted, authentic, genuine, but also courageous. I think as a person, I've loved being part of a church where I think I can follow courageous leaders, even leaders that will get things wrong and be able to admit they got it wrong. But I think I'd prefer to follow a leader that was able to admit their mistakes but actually went for some things than we just kind of stayed incredibly safe and never did anything. And so that's what we're kind of aspiring to. And one of my favourite little leadership stories is of, sorry, a little digression here. You'll probably expect that by now. But is of a poem written by a guy called Lord Tennyson, who wrote this poem, The Charge of the Light Brigade, or Battle of the Light Brigade, Charge of the Light Brigade, to do with the Crimean War. And there's this huge cavalry charge by the British against the Russians. But what you don't hear in that poem is that when the cavalry would have charged, there would have been a bugle that would have sounded, and that would have meant officers to the rear, because it's like we don't see any officer casualties here. We just want the kind of everyone else to kind of take the brunt of cannon fire. But I think biblical leadership is the opposite to that. I think it's like leaders to the fore. I think we want to be people that set the example, that set the pace, that really carry people with us, but are actually the first to stand up and be counted, the first to take courageous decisions with our own life and following Jesus with our families and with our money and with our time and everything that goes with following Jesus. And so, we want to be a team that you can look to and think, yes, it's not perfect, but the life of God is at work and there's something that I want to follow. I want to be a part of that.
Yeah. I mean, leadership is almost more to do with character than it is to do with gifting. I mean, we do want gifted people, and in fact, we are all gifted. All Christians are gifted in many different ways, spiritual gifts, practical gifts, but actually character is really important here. And so when you're looking at who do you want to be a leader, then you are looking at character traits and seeing, who is it that actually is going to be courageous, who is going to be on display, who are people going to naturally follow. And so hopefully even within the leadership team now, there'll be people who you will say, yep, I can follow that person, I can follow that man, that woman, that couple. Hopefully you already see some of the things that we've been talking about in the leadership team, and as we grow together as a team, as we encourage one another, as we learn ourselves, because we do spend time studying, talking about these things, praying together, asking God to help us in these leadership moments. Hopefully you will see right across the leadership team their leadership ability is growing, their gifting growing, but it's really character that is the key thing, I think.
And you just touched on something that I think is really helpful. I think it's okay to relate differently to different people on a team, especially a team of the size that we are. But even if there was a much smaller team, I think just naturally your personality, your maybe the gifts that God has given you, the person that you are, you naturally think, I really relate well to that person. And that's actually okay. I think sometimes we can think that's a kind of a negative thing. But I guess what's important is that we're not saying I relate to that person and I just don't, I forget when that person says anything. It's actually, no, I'm relating to this team, and you might just happen to do that largely through a group, a smaller group of people than the team. and that's fine. You know, we all kind of naturally relate to some and not others, click with certain styles and not others, and that's why team is so important. Otherwise, we'd all just be relating to one person, and it'd be
absolutely. I think it's inevitable, isn't it, that some people you will relate to more than others, and I think that's a God thing. I think God links our hearts, particularly amongst some of us. And with such a big team, it's going to be hard to know everybody really, really well. But it's important that you have a number of people in the leadership team that you can say, actually, they have integrity, I trust them, I follow them, I listen to what they say. But obviously, we are together as a team in this.
Yeah. So why don't we just watch a video now from the leadership team? Let's hear from them. And let's hear from them about what does it look like to follow leaders, which is something we're going to cover in a moment.
So, leadership. What does leadership mean to us within the context of being pioneer members of Redeemer? I think the first thing when we talk about leadership, it's important just to recognise the big calling that is. This is a big deal. You know, we can see Alex, at the head of our church, and just the seriousness of that role and the responsibility that he has in that, and that he takes in that role. But it's great when we can recognise and appreciate all the talents and the gifts that God has given Alex to lead us in this church. But I think perhaps, the thing with leadership is that the challenge comes in those times when Alex or Rodney or Joel or whoever it might be, perhaps doing something slightly differently to what we might expect. Maybe we don't agree with the way a decision they've made or the way they're leading us. And I think that's the point at which our whole attitude towards leadership can be challenged. That's the point at which we need to recognise the task, the serious task that God has given them, and to be willing to lead, to be led into the places that God is calling us.
Yeah, I think in that kind of time as well, there's space for raising other ideas or challenging, maybe not challenging, but kind of questioning things, and that's not wrong, but it might just be that you might disagree with something, or we might disagree with something, but acknowledging that they're our leaders and we trust that
ultimately
God is guiding them.
Yeah, like ultimately there might come a point where you just need to let it rest.
Yeah.
And have faith that in those that are leading us.
Yeah.
Okay, that was really great. Hope you enjoyed that. So in Redeemer, Alex, what does the structure of the leadership look like?
Okay, this is really important because we just want you to be comfortable and clear about how we're being led. So in this season, I'm taking a very particular role in leading this plant, leading the leadership team, and that's before we get to the point where we're recognising elders, which will still have a team leader, but I think will feel much more like very particularly like this is being led by a team rather than one person having a very particular role. So I'm leading it in this season with Joel and Rod really key in helping me as a directional team. So together we're really kind of spearheading, I guess, the way that we're thinking and the decision making, but we're also doing that with a leadership team as well, which is made up of 22 people, couples, singles, men and women, and it's just been fantastic to meet with them. We're still early days, and you can imagine like building something primarily on Zoom. I mean, we met maybe once or twice before.
Yeah, not a lot, was it?
Yeah, very. So we've really tried to, had to forge something from nothing in that sense, in a very difficult
but it's taking shape, isn't it? We're getting to know each other on Zoom, and we're beginning to get a little bit of traction, I think, in making decisions and moving forward.
So those three things. It's also worth mentioning that in this season, we just need more apostolic input than we would perhaps in other seasons where we're more established. So what we mean by that is we're looking particularly to Fuzi McQuena. Many of you will know him or at least have seen him. We did an interview with him a couple of months back. Particularly to him because we think God has given him what we'd call an apostolic gift, which is, I guess, really to oversee, to father, to lead like whole chunks of churches and gather them up into a bigger mission than we might be included in if we just focused on what we were doing, what God has given us to do in Worthing. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. And the great thing about Fuzi is he really carries us in his heart because in Jubilee, which was the previous church that Redeemer came out of, Fuzi lived with us. He was with us for about 3 years, involved in leadership, and many of you will know him, and he really carries us in his heart. I know that he prays for us a lot. I know him personally, obviously you do as well, and some of you do, and so he really cares what happens in Redeemer. So he's really invested himself into the church. It's not just we're not just a church, another church on a piece of paper, to be honest with you. I think actually we're quite special to him, if I can say that. So
he personally inputs into us, but also in the future he's going to start having a role in inputting into the leadership team, and hopefully you'll see him at various things as well. Like we did this interview with him, I'm sure there'll be other things. He's also going to be with us in a year and a bit's time when we have Gather 2021. He's committed to come to that, and I'm sure we'll see him probably before that anyway. So so he's going to be really involved. So those things are the things. So I'm leading it with Rod and Joel, with this leadership team. And so when we talk about what does it mean to follow leaders in this season, that's what we're asking you to follow.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. So let's now listen to another member of the leadership team.
Hi, I'm Val. And I've been asked to say a few words about what leadership means to me. Firstly, it was a privilege and an honour to be asked to become part of the leadership team for Redeemer. It's been an interesting journey. There's quite a lot of us. So back in February, we started meeting when we could in somebody's house, and there were people there that I didn't really know very well. And you're just kind of getting to know them when we had to go onto Zoom. So it's even more of a challenge, but it's been an opportunity to be honest, to be open, and learn to trust other people, particularly, as I say, those that you don't know. And I think that's quite vital in being a leader. Also, it's a big responsibility, which I'm taking very seriously. We're making decisions that will be the foundation of our church, Redeemer, particularly when we go into the Gilbourne Centre. And I want it to be a great place for our family, as we are now, but also for hundreds of people in Worthing, that they will also want to come to Redeemer and therefore come to know God.
Great. So what does it mean to follow leaders? I think really it's a heart thing. It's you giving your heart to them as individuals and as a team, not just a mental assent, but actually saying, no, my heart is with them.
There's a great story that I always end up coming to, which is in 1 Chronicles 11, and it's where that some men come to David, and David is not yet king, but I think is about to become king, and they say, David, we're with you. We're kind of like, we're with you heart and soul. We see that God is with you, and we want to commit ourselves to you. And in that moment, it is a heart thing. They're genuinely kind of giving themselves to David. They're going to follow David.
Yeah.
But in doing that, the reason that they're doing that is because they see the hand of God on David. What they're not saying is, David, we think you're absolutely perfect and you're never going to let us down. In fact, that definitely doesn't happen in the life of David. But they're saying, no, we see God at work in you, and we know that God is never going to let us down. And I think that's the healthiest way to approach giving yourself to leaders. Like some of you might have been in churches before, and sometimes it can be very painful when you kind of commit yourself at a heart level to leaders, and they do let you down. And to be honest, I want to fess up right now. We are going to let you down at some point. We're not going to be everything that you want us to be. We're going to make mistakes. Hopefully we'll have integrity in it and be able to be honest. But actually, we're not Jesus. We're not God. We actually really, what we want you to do is to be able to give yourself to us. But in doing that, you're saying, I'm really trusting myself with God. I'm putting my life, my Christian life, my whole life in God's hands through this leadership team in this season. And because what that means is that when we do let you down, and we will, actually, you were entrusting yourself to God anyway. You know, your life didn't hang in my hands, in Rodney's hands. It hangs with him. And so I think that's a healthy way to approach it.
Yeah, so you've got to really have grace for leaders. I think that's so important. It's easy to criticise when things go wrong, and if I'm honest, we've all done it.
Yeah.
But actually to have grace, to have room, to understand, actually sometimes mistakes are made. But at the same time, it's important to be able to talk to leaders, and the leadership team are very open to having honest discussions and things that you're not sure about, things that you want to question, or just find out some more information about. Please do ask, because we want to be leaders who are very approachable, that anybody can come and talk to us in confidence, confidence or in a public setting,
Yeah.
and just ask questions and find out more, because I think in the end communication is so important, because when we are able to communicate well, then actually it can resolve a lot of issues.
Yeah. I think another practical way, I think approaching leaders is actually a great way to honour them and follow them, because you're not just assuming things, you're actually saying, no, I want to talk about this. And another way is praying for them. Yes. And you'll find that if at this moment you think, I can kind of, like Rodney said, I can mentally ascend to the idea that, yes, this is a leadership team that is leading the church. But you find that actually you find it difficult to give yourself to leaders, maybe because you've been hurt in the past or other reasons. Actually praying for them is a great way to move your heart in the right direction. And so I just encourage you to do that. Make a habit of praying for leaders. And I've found actually that leadership actually is occasionally a lonely thing.
Yes.
In that I think I've been like this before. It's easy to kind of criticize and point out when things go wrong, but actually easy to forget to encourage when things go well. What I've loved about this season is that so many of you have been so encouraging about the way that we've started Redeemer and what we've done, and that's just been fantastic. And I think that's a great way to honour leaders, is just to thank them when thank them for what they're doing and things are going well. Really good. That goes a long way. A bit of thanks goes a long way.
It does, and it's about trust. It's about integrity. About honesty. I think there needs to be a level of trust, and hopefully we will display integrity and do our best. And like we said earlier, there will be some mistakes made, but we will learn from mistakes as well. And in fact, sometimes mistakes, although you don't want to make mistakes, actually they can be great moments when you step forward much quicker and things grow and develop. Yeah. So following leadership is really, really important, and we also realise it's an honour and a privilege for us to be able to lead the church. We don't take it for granted. We don't assume leadership in any way, but actually we feel called to do it, and I would say everybody on the leadership team has that sense of calling, has a sense of actually in this season God has called me to get Redeemer off the ground and to lead Redeemer in its early years. And so we will try and do that to the best of our ability. Yeah.
It genuinely is a privilege to lead you. Just in these last couple of months, the starting Redeemer, we're so young still. It's just been a privilege to do it. It's been a joy. And that's what the Bible says it should be for leaders. It should be a joy to lead people and not a burden. And we're just so excited about the future. So we do want to lead you into some big things. So God has given us some big things to get our teeth into, to get hold of, not just in this town, but way beyond as we start to plant churches and even beyond that in the nations that we'll be involved in. God is going to give us some big things, and we want to do our best to humbly but kind of confidently with faith lead you there. And so we'd love you to come with us. We'd love you to join us. We think it will do you good. And so we hope you have a good time discussing this in your groups.
Yep.
And the plan is that over the next few weeks you'll be discussing these, and then we're kind of just going to give you an opportunity to reflect and reflect back. So we're actually going to, because we've been through the process of saying, yes, I'm planting Redeemer, or certainly most of you have, we're kind of just going to assume that that's still the case. But we do want you to come back to us through your leaders, the leaders of your groups especially, but directly to us if that's what you want to do. And just say if you've got questions, if you've got concerns, if you've got encouragements. We'd really love that kind of interaction so that we can move forward knowing, yes, we're all on the same page together with leadership, but also with vision and family priorities in the next few weeks.
Wonderful. I think our time is up now. Yeah. Thank you so much for watching, and have a fantastic week.
Yeah.
God bless you all, and see you next time.
Yeah, have a great week. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.